Hello, and welcome to the third walk around video blog. Um, as you can see, I'm still fiddling with the name. Haven't quite come up with something that I think really fits as of right now. Um, hoping that I will have one soon, but until then, we'll make do. um, Still haven't had a chance to do anything to upgrade the audio or video quality yet. Um, Hoping that that's not too much of an issue. I don't think it's too terrible. I do still want to work on that, however, so that is something I'm going to be doing at some point. Um, so I'm gonna jump right in. Um, I am going to review Wards of the Faerie by Terry Brooks. Now, I had put this off for a while because I wanted to give it another read through because of the speed at which I blew through it during my first reading. This is a Terry Brooks book. Um, that's kind of the easiest way to put it. Those of you who have read him are familiar with his style and the way he writes. Not yeah, his style and the things he writes about. um, for those of you who aren't, see if I can give you a brief overview of the series in totality. Basically, the bulk of his writing takes place several thousand years in our future, in a world that's been totally decimated by what is to be our Third World War. Um, the massive amounts of radiation and stuff like that from that war has led to the emergence of um, the three races, which are um, humans, which manage to the few of them who manage to survive unaffected, dwarves who survived by going underground, thereby um, being changed as being shorter than most people normally are because of that prolonged existence underneath the earth, and gnomes, which are the mutated leftovers of that war. They're uh, the yeah the ones that really were most noticeably changed, and in unfortunate ways. And we also see the elves. However, they were not a product of this war, as he notes. The elves were here; they have always been here. It wasn't later that even mankind showed up on Earth, and then these other three. So um, basically, that's the world we're in. It's one that has completely, well, marginally moved past sciences and focuses on magic. That begins to change later on in the series as there begins to be a rebirth of science, as there's not as much magic in the world anymore. Um, so basically, this book is a quest for the missing Elfstones, which is a very ancient um, magical item that has been lost for thousands of years. Um, there have only ever been two sets mentioned. There are the blue Elfstones, which have been featured in many a Brooks book, which are seeking stones. They help the characters find things, and they also have some defensive capabilities. There's also the Black Elf Stone, which is pivotal in bringing things back from other planes. Um, so the Druids, who are kind of the UN of this story, except they are um, a group of magic of wizards, like druids, basically what the name implies. They are a third party. They don't take sides in conflicts. Their goal is to preserve magic, and to basically learn all of the magic that is out there, so they can see that it's put to the best use for all of humanity, for all of the races. Um, and this Druid Council is looking for all these missing elf stones. And it isn't until this book that they get their first clues, um, from the records of the elven histories, is where they find out the information about it. And so we see the very beginning of this story begin to unfold, as the as the bulk of the Druid Council leaves their stronghold in search of the stones, leaving uh, two or three main characters behind at the stronghold itself to safeguard it from enemies. And in the next two books of this series, we will see um, the development of most likely them finding the Elfstones, and then bringing them back and what they end up doing with them. Um, Again, a very good book. I've always been a fan of Brooks. I've been reading him for a long time, and just overall fantastic. Um, Again, highly recommended. Uh, the first book of the Dark Legacy of Shannara, his newest trilogy. So I recommend people go check that one out. The other thing I'm going to do is, like in the last episode, since I am not quite sure what else I want to do in these, I'll just do another Ask Ken question. I do have one more, so I'll have to think of something new come the second one I do this week, because I would like to do 2 a week. But on to the question. This question is, where do you go for help when you get stuck? Okay, this is a easy question. This is one that I know the answer readily to, and it's a straightforward answer, which will be different from the one from last week. For a while, in my early stages of writing, and I do assume that this question is directed towards my writing, since that's really all it could be about. But anyway, we're going to talk about it as if it refers to writing. So as I was saying, when I first began, if I got stuck, that was usually an ending point. I would just set it aside and tell myself I would pick it up again later. Of course, I never would. It would just be a project that would never be completed. And there weren't too many, but there were a couple of things that I've since then misplaced or lost that I would have liked to have completed now. But that all really started to change once I got to college. Once I began work on my book, I was getting to that point where I was a little bit stuck. I wasn't really stuck yet, but I was approaching that point where it would get put aside, until I had a little chat with my roommate, Stuart, who, those of you who are familiar with the blog, he did a brief overview of the Lord of the Rings series, so he shouldn't be an unfamiliar name. I kind of spent an evening going over who the characters were, what the basic story was I had so far, where I wanted the story to go, what I wanted it to accomplish, all this kind of stuff. Um, and together we just um, were able to look at it in a different light, and it really helped me to develop um, and make big changes to what I had originally come up with. My original storyline had 25 main characters, um, and I mean main characters, um, and unless you've read something like Martin, George Martin in his Song of Ice and Fire series, not too many people are willing to have such massive numbers of different characters, and I ended up realizing that that was probably way too many. So that was one of the early changes. My cast went from 25 mains to about 5. Um, so it got drastically cut down. Um, I also kind of, on several occasions, completely rearranged who my characters were. The names all stayed the same, but their personalities, the things that made them who they were, took huge leaps in vastly different directions. So um, that it it's he's been one of the biggest helps um, towards any writer's block I've encountered. Up until this point, I'll still um, give him a little something. Hey, read this, or what do you think something like this should end up turning into, or just anything like that. Um, and he has been a great deal of help. The only other place I go to when I get stuck is there's a website, fantasy-faction.com, which is just a conglomerate of writers, pretty much constricted to the fantasy realm, though there are some sci-fi there as well. Um, and the website is basically forum based, so um, there are topics that you can discuss on, and um, just things like that. Anything from who's your favorite wizard to will you critique this piece for me. Um, and there's just a wonderful community of people who really want to see each other succeed as writers. Um, and and there's a whole other element as well. And then there's the articles that they put out, which are usually something to do with an explanation of some specific aspect of writing. I know I've read over how to write convincing female characters, fight scenes, the importance of food in your stories, all sorts of these things. And that's really the only other place I'll jump over to if I find myself really at a loss for what to do. Um, but I hope that answers that question. I think it does. But that's really all I have for this episode. Uh, Again, I just want to implore you guys to leave any comments you have, questions, ideas, thoughts, um, what you liked, what you didn't like. Please put those in the comments. It would really help me get a grasp on what I should be doing with these episodes and what I shouldn't be doing. And hey, if you have an idea for a name, I'd love to hear it, because I'm struggling trying to come up with something that doesn't sound completely ridiculous. Um, that's all I have. I'll see you guys later this week.